All right. So, for those of you guys that have attended any of these virtual parent academies sessions before, you guys all know me. I'm Courtney Kowalchuk. I am a psychotherapist in the area. I've been working with North County Family Counseling Specialists and the district, um, for since around 2016, 2015, so close to 10 years now. Um, I have the pleasure of talking to you guys tonight about positive discipline. Last, uh, the last session we did, I did a positive discipline part one. And of course, if you were present during that, you may have been looking forward to the part two. This is kind of where we're going to get a little bit more in depth into the positive discipline model and how to apply this to your parenting. I will say a couple of things. I love to have discussion in these conversations, in these sessions. I think it keeps it a little bit more interesting, and I certainly think it adds value to the material. So there's a couple of questions that I'll ask, and hopefully you guys will engage. You can always put stuff in the chat if you're more comfortable doing that, which is one reason why the PowerPoint looks like this. I don't run the slideshow because I want to go into the chat and answer questions. So here we go. Tonight we're talking about positive discipline. My quote to kick off the evening for the next 2 hours-ish of time is a quote actually from a book, and it's written by Mona Delahook. And she says, "We falsely assume that children of a certain age have volitional control over their emotions and behaviors. That assumption is the main reason that many techniques to help children with behavioral challenges fail, taking a heavy toll on relationships." This is from her book called Beyond Behaviors. And I'm super interested to hear what you guys have to say about this. It's a pretty, um, I don't know, interesting and catching, for me at least, statement to make, and kind of pointing out instantly that we've falsely assumed something. But if anybody wants to share what you guys think about this, whether you agree, disagree, got some thoughts on it, please don't hesitate to get the discussion going. Ooh, good. Okay. A parent said, "I think this also applies to their use of language." So I would assume we're talking about children's use of language, that they don't necessarily have the volitional control over language as well. I agree. I'm curious what a certain age is referring to. Okay. Okay. Agreed. Some kids can seem very mature, but in reality, they're still developing emotional coping skills, communication. They have control of emotions at times, but they cannot express how they truly feel. I agree. Children are also individuals who develop at their own pace. Yeah, this is great feedback. Thank you guys so much. So I'm hearing like some murmurs of agreement with the quote. And I think Cassandra, I hope I'm saying your name right, pointed out a good fact that sometimes our children can seem very mature. And of course, particularly our teenagers. And that's kind of been my age of choice in terms of working with kids. I've always really found value in that. And so perhaps I have much more dialogue and strategies about teenagers because I maybe have a preference in that in my work. However, it's really important to recognize the fact that the brain is still developing until the age of around 25. And so with teenagers, particularly now, and with their access and consumption of media, is particularly the internet and social media, we sometimes can that kind of gets blurred in our minds when we have teenagers because it's like, hey, why are you doing that? Why does this behavior keep happening? What do you think? What were you thinking? Um, in terms of behavioral challenges that we have with teenagers. And I just find myself very often reminding myself and reminding other parents that I work with that we got to remember that teenagers, while they look very close to us in terms of maturity, they're not at all. And the brain is very much so still developing. So I think that's a great point to bring up. We've got some more dialogue in the chat. Yeah, so people are commenting that brain's not fully developed until 25. Basically taking the time with patience to get to know our own child. Their communication and language skills are important to have an effective understanding and relationship. Totally. That's great feedback. Juan is asking, how do you handle a child that just won't express their emotions as much as one asks questions or seems concerned about their behavior? Yeah, I think I would start with helping them learn how to identify first, how to identify their emotions. And you could do that really kind of simply in it could be something so simple like, hey, I'm noticing that you're feeling really angry. You're feeling mad, right? Like helping them to identify whatever the feeling is in the moment. Obviously, you're gonna like, hey, am I reading this wrong? Like, you seem really angry. You seem right. Like, give them some space to like explore. Like, no, I'm not angry. I'm sad or whatever. But as a parent, you can kind of maybe judge what your child is feeling, and that can be like kind of the first step in helping kids that just don't um, don't express their emotions. So I hope that helps just initially for your question, Juan. What does it mean to be volitional? Volitional is like of your own will, right? Under your own willpower. But welcome. Um, yeah, so this is great feedback. And I think the main reason why I chose this quote in particular for today is because of this, I think, assumption that parents sometimes have, and not just parents, we're talking educators and administrators and things like that as well. We have to remind ourselves that they're students in this process, particularly when we're talking about emotional awareness, emotional insight, right? All of these things, behavior, even like how do I act when X happens or when Y happens? They are students in this process. And so it is going to do them a disservice if we don't see them as that and assisting them by teaching them. And kind of, I've talked about this since the last class of really utilizing your parent in a way that's teaching, right? We gave that example of the word disciple, which is where discipline comes from, right? And it's a teacher-student relationship. And essentially looking at parenting from a kind of different paradigm, having a little bit of a paradigm shift into this space where we're trying to teach children how to behave, and of course how to feel and how to express their emotions and how to do all of that in a healthier way. And then of course just how to be productive in society and how to be happy and um, live a quality life and all those things. So one last little piece that I wanted to talk about
May
within this.
volunteer.
Oh, we that kind of scared me. I think somebody's got their mic on. If you guys could all just do a quick mic check and make sure that your mics are off, it would really help us moving forward. Thank you. So the last piece that I wanted to mention with this quote is the end to her sentence, which is, this assumption is really taking a heavy toll on our relationships with our kids. And it's because we kind of have this misunderstanding or this assumption that like, you should be doing all this, right? Like you should be able to do this. And within reason, what I'm not saying is that your kids just can't do anything because their brains are developing, like not at all. It just means that we have to look at their behavior and the things that they do every day and our parenting within that lens of their learning. They're going to make mistakes. And that's really huge in my presentation tonight, this concept of mistakes and children making mistakes. And that kind of leads us in perfectly to our topic. And I'm going to come back to this next discussion question because this just kind of leads us so perfectly in. Our objectives for tonight is essentially to help you develop the relationship between you and your child, right? I'm going to give you some exercises to take home, in particular to learn some of these new skills and explore some of the new skills that I'm hoping to impart on you. And we've talked a lot about the research last time. So this concept of, we're going to go ahead and jump in. The concept of mistakes is really big in positive discipline, this theory and this modality of parenting. And the reason for that is because it's founded on this idea, and I'm going to go ahead and read it. It's right on the PowerPoint. I'm going to read it exactly like I wrote it. Misbehaving children are, quote, discouraged children. Children who have mistaken ideas on how to achieve the primary goal, to belong. Their mistaken ideas about this, like how do I belong? These mistaken ideas are what lead kids to misbehavior. So we can't be effective in our parenting until we address those beliefs rather than just the behavior. And to me, of course, I'm a therapist. This really resonates with me because I don't think, and I find that a lot of parents that I work with, they're like exasperated because they've tried all these things and they're listening to people on social media, or they're like, they read a book, or they've got like parents or friends or coworkers or people who are like helping them and saying like, try this. And yet most of the parenting advice is not coming from this place of helping children correct those mistaken beliefs. Okay. So that's kind of where positive discipline varies. And it's because it was founded by psychologists, right? I talked about this like back in the 20s, and then leading into the 40s and 50s, there was more research done on it. And then kind of modern day positive discipline was really kind of curated a little bit more for the modern population in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So, and then of course there's always updates with new research and stuff like that. But that gives you the kind of capsule history of positive discipline, which I went over in depth last time. But yeah, essentially, we believe that kids that are misbehaving, they have mistaken ideas about their sense of belonging. Okay. And we think that if we address that, their sense of belonging and how they've kind of developed, this mistaken belief, that's what makes change. And so what I want to do is give you those skills as a parent to help you do that. There's a chart that I'm going to share, and I would suggest that you screenshot it. The cool thing about this is that Annie posts in the chat, she'll give you a copy of the presentation in PDF form. So if you can't screenshot it for some reason, or it's too small, you can look at it. It's an awesome chart, but it is very like in depth with a lot of detail. But I feel like I want to give it to you guys because it's really helpful. And if you have a particular child and a particular behavior, you could actually locate it on the chart and it'll give you what the belief is, like what the actual proper belief is, correct belief is, what their mistaken belief is, how it makes us feel, how it makes them feel, and what to do to help them get out of that. So it's like it's really cool. And I'll share that with you guys in just a couple slides, and you can take that with you and look at it to really get yourself some personalized help with whatever your child is struggling with. So again, I don't think that we can be the most effective parents unless we address those beliefs. Okay. So that's kind of like the number one thing. Now there's ways that we do that, right? So the heading is belonging is the foundation. Your child and anybody, as I'll show you in this chart really quick, a human being's basic need or desire is to feel a sense of belonging and significance in their life. And this is a psychological principle that these people believed and, did their research, and they found that people want to belong. People want to feel significant. And when we feel encouraged, that belonging happens in a socially useful way, right? Kids are they believe that they have a place in the world, they feel included, they have opportunities for involvement, they're validated, right? They see humans as equals. So you can see what this would look like if it were a socially useful way of belonging or a perceived way of belonging. And when human beings feel discouraged, when we try to find belonging and significance, we seek mistaken ways or socially useless ways, right? So this like misbehavior is what we see. And so if you can see your screen, I quickly flipped to this chart where it talks about the paths to belonging. And this is where I'm getting a lot of this information. Like I said, this is like a gold mine in terms of the concepts that I'm talking about. And I only have 2 hours to help you guys tonight. So this is really good for you to like take home and check out later because I'm not going to be able to get it all. Annie threw it in the chat. Thank you so much. Yeah, so that's a really helpful chart. And I refer back to that and we'll talk about all that stuff. You can find your own child's mistaken behaviors and the examples in those columns. Okay. So getting back to this slide, we use encouragement to help kids feel belonging so that the motivation for misbehaving is eliminated, right? So there's going to be a lot of ways that I'll teach you how to use encouragement or what to do. One of the ways that we use encouragement is we celebrate successes, right? Rather than focusing on their mistakes or their failures, or in better terms, the misbehavior, right? So in positive discipline, this gets a little bit more into the weeds, but one of the skills that we teach parents is active ignoring, right? And this is going to allow you to separate from that correction anytime there's a negative behavior, or I guess we should say an undesired behavior, right? Whatever you want to call it. We're not focusing on those. We're going to focus on and celebrate the successes. When our kids do what we want them to do, when they're happy and successful and they have that sense of belonging and significance and they're doing quote unquote the right things or the good things, right? The behaviors that are expected of them. So that's one way we accomplish this. We use encouragement. A great way to help kids feel encouraged is to spend time being with them. I talked a little bit about this in previous classes, and I have always considered in my work the top priority for me helping parents is their relationship with their children. Do you have a good relationship with your kids? And if not, that's where I start. Okay, so if you can kind of ask yourself that question, that's where I would start. And so spend time being with them, undistracted, right? Alone. So, like each child. I also recognize how hard that is and how time consuming that is. And I want to validate all of that for you guys because parenting is really hard, especially when most of us, both parents are working or single parents or co-parents or blended families, or it's really hard. And so that can look like 10 or 15 minutes per day per child, right? Something where you spend the time that you have, the time that you can manage, excuse me, in your schedule, where you don't have your phone, there's no screens, there's no, I'm cooking dinner while I'm doing it. It's like complete undistracted attention. For littles, maybe that's like bath time. Um, for older kids, it might be waiting until kind of the end of the night and they're doing their thing and you're just going to go be a piece of furniture in their room or wherever they are and just kind of hang with them with no expectations of like, you want to talk? How was your day? Right? It's just like, I'm a piece of furniture. I'm just here. So those are kind of some of my tips there, but that's one of the best ways that we help children feel encouraged, right? We want to get this like, you belong, you're encouraged to do the things that are asked of you or encouraged in a, again, socially useful way. You belong, you're significant, right? One of the strategies is like the saddest or happiest time sharing. I call it that. And I don't know, my hope for each of you is that you get to eat meals with your kids. I prioritize that we're all home and we all get to eat at the table together. My kids are younger, so I recognize that, once they get older, you're doing lots of things. They've got multi-layered routines and with people working from home and all that kind of stuff, I totally understand that that might not be doable for your family. And yet pick a routine activity that you do together and try this out where you say like, okay, what was the saddest and happiest time of your day today? And each person gets to share. The saddest part of my day was something happened in school, or the happiest was getting to come home and eat my favorite snack, whatever it is. Again, we're building in these small, I would argue, strategic ways that we encourage our kids and that they feel this sense of belonging and significance. We're asking them to share with us. And then it doesn't have to be like, well, how was your day? Right? Because sometimes I know parents have said to me, like, I asked my child how their day was and they like shut down. And so this is kind of a little bit more of an innocuous, like you get to share what you want. What was the saddest and the happiest time of your day? And it could be anything. Moving on, one of the things that we recommend in positive discipline is family meetings. And I will share, I sent it to Annie. I hope she throws it in the chat at some point. It's a 2-page document that we'll get to at the end of the slides, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about how to do these and what their purpose is. But essentially, we use family meetings weekly to solve problems with cooperation and mutual respect. This is a way that families can problem solve together. I talk a lot about teaching children how to problem solve, and this is a concrete way, a concrete skill a concrete way to teach that skill. Because a lot of parents are like, I don't know how to teach my kids how to problem solve. Like, this is it. And so you're going to help them problem solve in real time. And there's a way to do this, like I said, and it's very specific. And I'll get to that, and I'll give you guys some stuff to take home so that if you want to start doing family meetings weekly, you won't have any questions. It's very thorough. It'll give you a lot of information that you need. And they're awesome. You can do them starting from a very young age. One of the big tips when it comes to belonging and significance is giving your children meaningful jobs. This is something that I've changed in my mind since doing therapy and getting trained and certified in positive discipline education. Is I call chores family contributions. They're not chores. You're contributing to the household, just like I contribute with my income, with my safety, with my parenting, with finances, with my knowledge, right? I contribute in certain ways, and your children can contribute in the way that they're able to, which again, if we're looking at it from this perspective, that's a socially useful behavior. How can I contribute and feel like I belong and I'm significant in my system, right? And that's what we want. So give them jobs in your house, and you can ask them, like, what jobs do you want? Like, okay, here are all the jobs that we have. What would you like to do, right? Instead of just kind of delegating them in this kind of arbitrary way, I would say encourage your kids, like, okay, what are you good at? What do you want to pick? And your 16-year-old might pick the thing that surprises you, or your 12-year-old might be like, oh, I'll do this job, right? um they each have their own strengths, and we want to play on those. We also want them to feel like they belong when they contribute, and that's what we're doing when we give them jobs. If you find that, I know a lot of parents might be like, okay, well, I give them a job and then they don't do it. Well, have they contributed? Have they said, I want to do this? Like, every Tuesday and Thursday, I'm going to pick up the dog poop in the backyard, right? Most parents that I run into or help, they're like, no, I didn't ask them what they wanted to do. I gave them a chore, like I gave them a job, right? And so if your kids are a little older, I mean, you could try this with younger kids, and they, again, could surprise you, but like, allow some collaboration in that, especially with older kids. Um, Older meaning like 12 and up or 10 and up, right? Because um, then it's like, hey, I'm noticing that the trash isn't taken out, and that's what we agreed on, right? That you were going to do. I didn't arbitrarily give you this chore. Like, you agreed you were going to do it. That's your contribution. Um, and so again, fostering this sense of belonging. Decide together on the jobs to be done. We don't want to just give them to them. It's also a psychological concept that we are more likely to complete goals if we're the ones that set them, right? If your boss comes up with this goal for you at work of like, you're going to be this productive, you're going to do this many things, it's like, I don't think I want to do that. We find that we're much more productive and much more successful if we do that stuff ourselves. Somebody says, what if they don't want to spend time with you? That signals to me that the relationship is damaged in some way, right? Now, not always, because kids get to a certain age and it's very developmentally normal for them to want to start separating. This is typically around middle school aged, right? Children, they start to separate from the parental units, from the parents, and then it's, you don't know anything, you don't get me, only my friends do, right? Um, and that's completely developmentally appropriate. You're not doing anything wrong. You don't have a wild child. Maybe you do, but this is not, this is not the reason. It's very developmental normal for them to do that. Now, I would argue that if they just flat out don't want to spend time with you, I would ask why. Why don't they want to spend time with you? And you could ask them. Maybe they'll tell you the truth. I don't know. I don't know what age we're talking here, but like ask those questions. Hey, I noticed that you don't want to spend any time with me, and that kind of hurts my feelings. I want to know why. Can I do something to change that? Can I just, can we try? Like, I just want to be around. I just want to hang with you. No questions, no demands, no nothing, right? And that's, you have to start rebuilding the relationship. You have to start rebuilding maybe trust, maybe respect, right? So that's kind of where I would start. What age are they? Why don't they want to hang out with you? Is it that kind of normal developmental, or do they truly like don't want to have anything to do with you? I would say the relationship is damaged and it needs to be repaired. Annie put in the chat the family meetings PDF. So if you want to grab that, you can get ready for the slide. And if not, you can just scroll up in the chat to grab it when we hit that slide. So continued conversation about belonging is this. This is a concept that I help a lot of parents with, and that is, say you've had your family meeting and you've problem solved and you've come up with these contributions for each of the family members, and then one of the contributions is that your child's going to clean the dishes every night or 3 nights a week, and you go up there and like the dishes are there but there's just food on them still, and they're, it's not done properly, and then we get angry, right? And then we go to correct them or scold them or discipline them. And my first question is, does your child have the same understanding of what clean is to you? And the answer is more than likely no, right? I would say this even goes for spouses or partners that live together. I saw something today that said um, some people really care about the way the dishwasher is loaded, and some people don't. And those two usually marry each other, right? And I think that that's hilarious because it's so true. Maybe you're the person that doesn't care. I'm the person that does care, and my husband doesn't care. So this is that idea that like we no two people are going to have the same definition for what clean is, right? Or what taking out the trash even looks like or is, right? So like take the time to train your kids, and that is just really important. Like and there's a way to do that. We break this down into like, tell your kids what their contribution is. Show them what the contribution is, right? Show them what it looks like. Actually take the trash out with them. Okay. You're going to gather it all up, make sure there's nothing in the bottom of the can. You're going to put anything in there that fell out that's hanging around the trash can. We're going to get all that. We're going to get the recycle box and the old pizza box that's over here. Like, I get all of that. And I walk myself outside, right? Like, you're going to take them with you. You're going to show them first what it looks like to do the thing that you want them to do. And then you're going to do it with them. That's the second step, right? Is then watch them do what you showed them. Okay, the next day, all right, time to take out the trash. Like, let's go. I showed you yesterday. Let's do it. And then you walk through that process with them, right? So you can see that we're kind of building this environment of like, you're not going to be able to argue that I never taught you how to do the dishes because I did, right? I spent days, we spent a week getting you prepared of how to do the dishes, right? Like I did it for you, you watched, and then I watched you do it, and then we did it together. I gave you pointers, I helped. So there's a lot of things that this eliminates, and it's just kind of this really tidy way of helping your kids do the things that you're asking them to do, and you're setting them up for success, right? So like ask what their understanding is of their current chores or their current contributions. Hey, how do you understand clean the car out or whatever? And if it's not accurate, make it accurate, and then we move on, right? There's separate tips for kids who continue to refuse, and a lot of that has to do with consequences, and in positive discipline more what we call natural consequences, but we'll get to that. Teach and model mutual respect. So this is something that I always talk to parents. There was a parent that asked about what if they don't want to spend time with you, and I talked about the relationship being damaged. Do you teach and model mutual respect with your kids? Or is it this like very authoritative, listen to me, I'm the parent, I told you what to do, you have to respect me kind of leadership? Um, and how does that make you feel when that type of leadership is done with you? That kind of like one way authoritative, um, really no conversation, no collaboration. It doesn't feel very good. And so in that relationship, have you taught and modeled mutual respect? My best strategy to model this with your kids and to teach them is what we call the kind and firm method. You're not just kind, right? This isn't like permissive parenting, but you're not just firm. I'm not trying to teach you guys how to be authoritative leaders or whatever. I want you to be both. And so, one of my favorite kind and firm statements is, I love you and blah, 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 whatever. And I'll teach you, I think, on one of the next slides, like there's a formula, right? It's whatever the kind statement is, that connection statement, and whatever the boundary is or whatever the limit is. I love you, and my answer is no. You're the most amazing thing in my life, and we've agreed that you're going to do X, right? So there's this like, I really want to support you in this moment, and it's time for bed, whatever that looks like, right? And the reason why we use this, it's not just some like, contrived statement. It's connection lumped in with correction. It's not, we don't want you to do one before the other. And I certainly want you guys to come start your parenting with compassion, right? I know that's hard, especially when we're all taxed in our various ways, right? Okay, teaching children about mistakes, right? So we want to teach them, you made a mistake, like you did this thing, you lied, or you didn't do your homework, or you did this, right? Like that's a big mistake. And here's what I want to teach you about making mistakes. Everybody makes them. You're allowed to make them. And we learn from them, right? This isn't something that you just perpetually, then it's not a mistake, right? And so teaching your kids about mistakes, maybe sharing if that's the right time or place, sharing when you've made mistakes and how you handle that and how you feel when you make mistakes, right? That kind of empathetic teaching. Proper timing is really important in all of this. Proper timing with your parenting, proper timing with repairing the relationship, right? Because, I'm going to kind of keep going back to this example of this parent who's like, look, my kids don't want to hang out with me. Proper timing is going to go a long way. If they're upset, if they're having a bad day, if XYZ, something's going on, right? We want to make sure that we're timing these things properly, just like we would if we were teaching somebody something at work, right? We want to make sure they're in a place where they're able to be receptive, they're in a place where they're able to learn, right? So we want to have proper timing. And this obviously doesn't have to do with things like safety, and we're not going to wait for those kinds of things, right? But there is this kind of element of proper timing as parents, and I'm sure a lot of you know that rhythm, and it's like, oh, not touching on that today or right now, I'll kind of wait till maybe they've got some food in their stomach and they're we've got to kind of sit for a little while at home and kind of get them decompress from school or whatever. You probably all kind of can read your kids. Oh, they're sick today, not going to go there. Positive discipline really helps people focus on solutions rather than consequences. This is just an element to like everyday life and change in general, right? Goes back to that, like, if we're in a punitive phase or we're in a punishment phase, we're not as receptive. And so helping people focus on solutions, particularly our kids. I think in the last class, a parent was asking about her daughter. She's late all the time to her class, like her classes, and they're like, it's not the beginning of the day, right? So she's at school, and then like third period after the break, she's late or whatever. And we did some brainstorming about like maybe why that would be, but the reality is like, help your child. She was like 16, maybe 17. So like go to her and say, I'm recognizing, hey, like I'm getting all these notices. You're tardy a lot. Like, can we talk about like what's going on, or like how could I help you? Like, let's problem solve. Is it because you're like going to the bathroom? Probably because you're talking to your friends, right? Like, which is fine. Everybody needs to be social. I know you love your friends. That's one of your strong suits, right? But like, how could we make it so that you're not late, right? Like, let's focus on some solutions. Like, what do you think? And of course, this might, you might think that this would work better with older kids. I think it works well with younger kids, depending on age and kind of where your child is at developmentally. But yeah, like focusing on the solutions to their behavior instead of focusing on the consequences can go a really long way. And they in positive discipline talk about the three R's and an H, and there's going to be a slide on that, so we'll get to it. Another important tip about this is making sure the message of love and respect gets through in our parenting. And that is, I know, really hard, especially when we're dealing with the same frustrating behaviors over and over again. But the reality is, our children will be so much more receptive and so much more able to receive that correction if they feel loved, they feel respected, right? And if that's one that you struggle with, process through why. Like, I talk to a lot of parents about this. Like, find your partner, get somebody you trust, a parent, a grandparent, a best friend, and like, why is this so hard for me to parent compassionately first? Like, maybe a sibling. Like, talk about it, and hear your spouse, or hear your partner, or hear your co-parent, and like really figure that out. Because if that's one of the major barriers for you, it's going to cause problems if it's unaddressed, right? So just kind of making sure that that message of love gets through first. That'll go so far for your relationship. Have fun, use humor. I always tell people, in the mornings, sing. In the mornings, we sing, right? Like in my household, I sing in the morning because you wake up and there's a lot to do, and you've got kids to get ready and yourself to get ready, and you could thinking about work and traffic and whatever. And so find your thing, whether it's like be silly, have a sense of humor, uh, you know, whatever it takes, have fun, dance, you know, I don't know. This is going to be situation person specific. In our house, we like to sing, just like sing everything, right? Like sing, I'm gonna go do the dishes, right? Like we sing all that. All right. So let me check the chat really quick. Henry, the presentation slides, if you scroll up, they're in the chat and you can download them directly to your device. Angie, I know with my kids, they used to be mad at the end of the night or moody, and I say that's Ryan's. Toy review again, episode 4. Oh. Oh man, I don't know that reference, but that's awesome. Whatever you have to use with your kids, whether it's just like, yeah, some cool, like, humorous quip, inside joke that you guys have. Oh, it's a YouTube boy. Ah, all right. Maybe other parents get that. They know what it is. Thanks for that, though. Ryan's toy review. Okay. Nice. Yeah, use whatever that you have to in order to get your sense of humor going with your kids, because it goes a long way to like diffuse tension, to de-escalate arguments, to repairing their relationship, to making kids feel like they belong and they're connected and they're loved. It does all the things. So don't forget it. All right, so like I said, this chart is super helpful. Wow. Paths to belonging. I already talked a little bit about it, right? I was telling you guys from the perspective of positive discipline, the basic desire of human beings is to feel belonging and significant. And so when we have mistaken these beliefs, right? And you can see the mistaken beliefs in column 5. That's when some of this misbehavior is coming out, right? You can almost correlate. Find your child's behavior, the things that they're doing, in column 4, and then directly after that in column 5, it will tell you what the mistaken belief is. And we can directly address behavior with this. So please use this chart. It's awesome. There's actually a cool story to this chart. When I was learning and getting my certification for my license, I was working at Rady Children's, the outpatient psychiatry clinic here in Oceanside. We used to call it the Castle Building. I don't even know if it's still there, but it's right on the 78 and what is that? Vista Way and Rancho del Oro, that big tall building where it has all the medical offices in it. There's a therapist that was working there. Her name was Lois Ingber, and she essentially created this chart. And it's copywritten, it's hers, but like it's helped me help so many parents. And so if you're really struggling, like use this chart. It's awesome. You can, I know it looks kind of crazy, but just like take it column by column. And Christina, just scroll up in the chat, and then there's a download arrow on the slides that Annie shared, and you'll be able to directly download that to your device. All right. So, like I said, mistaken beliefs, right? We talked a little bit about this already, and man, this slide takes a long time to load. Some of the mistaken beliefs are: they feel disconnected, they feel disempowered, they feel disrespected or unsafe, they feel discouraged, or they feel like they're above others. Okay, so those are column 5 is exactly opposite to column 2. Column 2 is what we want them, the socially useful beliefs. Column 5 is the socially useless beliefs, and that's that misbehavior those mistaken beliefs are founded on. And so mistaken beliefs equal misbehavior. Okay, so we're focusing kind of on mistakes now, and we're going to talk a little bit about this and how to help our kids come back from mistakes. Okay, and this is going to help them with the Annie, I have no idea how to stop that. It's like participants can write on the presentation. I don't really know how that happens, but like, is that something that I'm allowing,
I I
or?
I did it. I'm sorry. I'm trying to.
That's okay.
I'm not able to erase it, so I don't know if it has to be the person who.
It's It's no big deal. It's just a red line. I'm just curious. It was happening last time and I'm like, that's so interesting. I've never seen that happen before. Don't worry about it. It adds character to the presentation. Okay, so some mistaken beliefs, right? We're going to go ahead and talk about these and specifically focusing on mistakes with our kids to help them, right, turn around some of these mistaken beliefs and some of this mistaken, the mistakes that they've made. So we talk about the 4 R's in positive discipline. And the first R is recognizing that you've made a mistake, right? You feel the embarrassment of making the mistake and then you let it go. And I will say, this slide can be used for both you when you make a parenting mistake or you just make a mistake in general, and teaching your kids. This is how you do it, right? Because teaching them how to come back from mistakes is one of those ways that we encourage them. We help them feel belonging. We help them feel significant, right? So take this slide, learn it, and then teach your kids. So recognizing that you made a mistake is the first part. Feeling that embarrassment, because everybody does. Nobody likes to make mistakes. And then we gracefully let it go, right? I have some interesting sub thoughts to this, and that is, think about when you made mistakes as a kid. Okay, how did your parents handle that? How did your parents handle when you misbehaved or you made a mistake? Oh, okay, I think Christina might be having trouble downloading the slides. And unfortunately, I don't know how to help her. So we're going to recognize that we made a mistake. We're going to take responsibility, the second R, for our mistake without blame, without shame, right? And this one's hard for people because, like I said, think about when you were a kid or when you were growing up, how it felt when you made a mistake, and how did your parents respond to you? How did your caregivers respond to you? How did the people when you were at school respond to you, like teachers, coaches, right? Um, there could be a lot of shame associated with that, right? And we could go into a deep wormhole about shame, but the reality is we want to teach our kids to take responsibility for mistakes, but we want them to not blame and not shame, right? And so you can teach this in a very actionable way. Like your kid, you watch them make a mistake and it's like, hey bud, like, man, you made a mistake, right? Like you thought it was this and you did this. Like, does that feel embarrassing? Or like, how does that make you feel? Like, what happens? To get like a rumbly feeling, or, oh, that probably feels bad. Like, I remember exactly making a similar mistake, or that must feel bad. Like, do you want to talk about it? I'm here for you. Right. So like helping them recognize it. And then, hey, you made a mistake, right? We don't have to blame your sister or blame your peer at school or blame your teacher. Like, you made a mistake. And we're going to take responsibility for that by owning whatever that is, right? And it's goes into number 3. Either we reconcile it by apologizing, and that's whether we have to apologize to the other person. Maybe we made a mistake at school and we have to apologize to our teacher, or right, like we want to reconcile whatever that mistake was. Might not necessarily be apologizing. It could be fixing it, right? If we're able to fix it. In terms of parenting, if you're going to take the responsibility for your mistake without blaming our kids or without shame, like, oh, I'm a terrible parent, right? Um, you can reconcile by apologizing. Kids are so forgiving, especially when adults are willing to apologize, right? And hopefully you've seen this in your own kids and in other kids. But the reality is that it's kind of this universal response from kids is like, it's okay. It's okay, teacher. It's okay, mom. It's okay, dad, right? Like that's how kids get over they get over it. And if you're able to apologize, which for some parents is really challenging for a lot of reasons, um, kids really value that. And it helps them, not only models to them what you should do if you make a mistake, but it also improves upon that relationship, right? Like if you have a teen that doesn't want to be around you, have you reconciled? Have you apologized for things that you've done that may have hurt them in the past? Or have you repaired the trust that may have been damaged in the past? And then the last one is resolve. So then at the very end of all this, you recognize that you've made a mistake, you've taken responsibility, you've apologized or fixed it, and then you're going to resolve by then focusing on solutions, right? So again, this is like another way to build in problem solving for the future, focusing on solutions, which is what we said we want to do. Okay, like you made a mistake, you did XYZ, you did this thing wrong, or you did this misbehavior. Now let's focus on how to make it so it doesn't happen again, right? Um, that is going to be crucial when we are talking about misbehavior with our kids. We're teaching them that at the end of all of this, you don't feel bad. You don't have to feel shameful. You make a mistake, you do all these things, and then we focus on how to not let it happen again, right? And so I think this is also where a lot of parents miss because we're not teaching kids this process that, like, you can make a mistake and this is how you feel that feeling, and then you let it go, and then you take responsibility and you reconcile, and then, like, what do we do next time, right? It's like this perfect built-in natural consequence, natural way of building problem solving and focusing on solutions into our everyday life. So take advantage of that. Try the 4 R's when you get some misbehavior with your kids. Juan says, are these questions adequate to ask a teen? I feel like they fit a younger age group. Um, oh, Denise, you're so welcome. I love learning with you guys too. Juan, yeah, so I'm not sure which questions feel like they address a younger age group. But the reality is that you just need to generalize this in your own language, right? In the way that you speak to your kids. If you have a 17-year-old, like you're gonna do the same process. It might just sound a little bit different. You might say like, hey, like I'm really recognizing that this thing keeps happening. Like this keeps getting messed up. Like what's going on, right? There's a way to tailor your language and generalize all of these skills no matter the age group. Um, okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about tips regarding these instances of misbehavior, or as we're terming them, mistakes. True discipline, or discipline in its most effective form, helps kids learn from their mistakes, right? Punishment makes children pay for their mistakes. And that's how we differentiate discipline versus punishment, right? Punishment is a way to make a kid pay for what they've done, versus discipline is helping them learn from mistakes. And positive discipline is not punitive in any way, right? There's not a whole lot of punishment in positive discipline because the data and research shows that punishment does not work long term. If it works for you and your family and you want to keep doing it, I would say keep doing it. If punishment doesn't work and you find that you're doing the same things over and over, I'm taking away all of her stuff, I'm doing all of this, like, and it's not working, then I would say try some of these things, right? Try looking at this from a different way and not having a punitive method of parenting. And again, I've only had a couple of hours to introduce you guys to positive discipline. You can certainly glean more information about positive discipline from books. I always recommend the book, positive discipline book that correlates to your child's age. There are books for 0 to 5, for middle school age kids, for teenagers. So for the parents that are concerned that like the language doesn't fit, certainly you can look at the book or get some information that's specific to teenagers, and that should help too. Some actionable tips are like model again and teach the 4 R's that we just talked about: recovery from mistakes or recovery from that behavior, right? I talk about this all the time with parents that our kids do not do what we tell them to do, they do what we do. So if you're having a lot of struggles with kids with like respect in the relationship and yelling in the relationship, or like, are you modeling some of that to them? It would be helpful to look at that at the very least, kind of start there. So model and teach the 4 R's. Post these. So you can post the recovery from mistakes where your kids can see them, right? In our world with technology, screenshot it and send it to them on their phone. If you're trying to use less technology, which is something that I always encourage parents to do and to adopt in their homes, and I have a class on that in VPA coming up about social media and technology. Post them a paper just like we used to on the fridge or somewhere else in the house, a bulletin board, or somewhere that you guys frequent in the house, and encourage them to learn how to learn from mistakes in ways that are encouraging to them rather than them getting shut down. Is there a question, or let's see? If everybody could do like a mic check and just make sure that your mic is off, that would really help us. Okay. So moving on, sharing stories. So like not only modeling it, posting it, right? Sharing stories where you followed these. And I'm a little bit hesitant about sharing stories. So I will say that I think there's a specific time and place to share your own stories, because a lot of kids can get very let's see.
Sorry, I'm not able to mute. I don't know whose account it is. GB, if you're able to mute yourself.
I don't know.
There you go.
Okay. So yeah, I would say I'm a little bit hesitant about sharing stories because kids can read that as invalidating, right? They're having their own experience, and if a parent comes in like, oh, well, I did this, right? It can be helpful in some scenarios, but I would say just kind of really try to read and maybe ask like, hey, would it be helpful if I shared sometimes when I did that? Or like, hey, I'd love to share my experience with you. Like, are you cool with that? Right. That can be really helpful and go a long way in terms of not shutting your kids down if they're like, oh, like she's talking again about her life and it doesn't fit my life at all, right? It's not the same. So I would say if you get that response from your kids, maybe just kind of ask, or don't do that one. You don't have to do them all. So this kind of goes back to the resolve at the end, or reconcile when we're talking about mistakes. Help your kids if it requires them to fix something or find a solution, right? Help them to plan for that, to brainstorm for solutions, or to brainstorm how they could handle it, or how they could apologize, or how they could reconcile that mistake or whatever they've done wrong. Or because kids really aren't great at doing this by themselves, and this goes back to the quotation in the beginning that our kids are not volitionally able to do all of this by themselves and manage their emotions and their behavior, they need our help. And there's another interesting quote that I saw recently that said, we essentially, the idea is that we lend our nervous system to our kids, right? We help them manage their emotions by managing our own, right? So we hold that safe space for them. We show them how to model, we model how to manage our emotions and our behaviors and socializing and whatever. And so they need us to help them do this. This isn't like, oh, I'm hand holding, I'm doing too much for them. They really do require us to help them. And so if you find that they're making the same mistake or they're doing the same behavior again and again, help them find solutions, help them make amends, engage them in a way that they can best fix this and brainstorm, because they truly need it. One really cool way to help kids feel a sense of connection and belonging and to kind of combat these issues of mistakes is like sharing inspirational stories that you know about people who've made mistakes. One of my favorites is the Edison quote where he says, "I haven't failed. I found 10,000 ways that didn't work." And that's really powerful because it allows kids to really take away that shame of that rejection, that failure, all those negative feelings that they get. It's like, you haven't failed, but you found a lot of ways that aren't working, right? Like it's a subtle reframe to help our kids come back from that, or to step out of that place of punishment or negative feeling. And it's like, okay, you've been tardy 6 out of 10 days, 6 out of the last 10 days. You're not failing, but you're finding a lot of ways that don't work, right, to be on time. So let's talk about it. Like, you can share some story if you have an inspirational story of your own that you really like, or something that maybe within your culture or within your family even. Share those stories because it can be really valuable in helping reframe for kids, especially kids who are very maybe sensitive and take that when they fail really really difficult or in a really negative way. We talked a little bit about family meetings. So during your family meeting, you can establish this kind of modeling technique, and you can pass around your whatever it's a talking stick, it's a thing in the family meetings that you use, something that where if this person's holding it, the other people aren't talking, right? It's a way to kind of like have order and structure in the meeting. But you might go around the circle and you might invite everybody to share a mistake that they made that week and how they came back from it or what they learned from it. And again, this is going to be something that is an actionable way to teach your kids. You're going to make mistakes, particularly in behavior when you're young. And this is how we deal with it, right? And it's not a shameful experience. It's not a guilt-ridden experience. It's a positive experience, and you're going to learn how to not do that in the future. Okay. So I've got 2 different like exercises for you guys to kind of take home or practice. And maybe I'll kind of stop here for a moment before we jump into these and ask for questions, because we're doing really good on time. Does anybody have questions about what we've talked about so far, or anything that you want to ask specifically about your situation, kind of relating to this sort of thing? Is anybody really struggling with the material, or, oh, this is hard to think about it in these terms, or anything at all? I'll just open up the floor for people to ask questions. You can either like raise a hand or put it in the chat. Oh, you're so welcome. All right, let's see. Okay, go over the slide with the columns to better understand what is going on with child's behavior. Yeah. So these are all oh nice. Now we're getting lots of questions. I'll kind of touch back. I think Vichy asked to go over these again. One reason that I don't go over this in depth is because it would take an entire session by itself to go through this, because there's a lot of information here. So I can't, we don't really have time to go into all of this. However, I would encourage you to find the place where you can start to help you is look in column 4 to find what your child does. Find the behavior in column 4. So maybe you have a child that is self-harming, and that's in column 4, and you'll see it in row 3. Column 4, row 3, and you'll see at the very bottom it says seeks revenge, strikes back, maintains a sense of superiority, demands service, or self-harm. So you can find some of this, like this little chunk of behaviors, right? And then we'll go ahead and kind of use this as an example. The mistaken belief is, I don't matter, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not likable, right? Or I'll hurt other people, I'll hurt myself because other people hurt me, or right. So these are some of the kind of mistaken beliefs, right? We were getting down to that. They feel unsafe. And other people, so you might feel hurt, angry, disappointed, embarrassed, offended, disgusted, right? Because of these behaviors, you might feel, this is in column 6, you might feel some of these ways. Other people react to this person, right? This mistaken belief, this child, and they usually punish, they judge, they retaliate. That's how we normally will react to these mistaken beliefs. And that's in column 7. What you want to do is in column 8, right? Their message in that mistaken behavior, that mistaken belief, their message in that behavior is, I'm hurting, validate me, right? And that's, they're self-harming, or they have a sense of superiority. They strike back, they feel a sense of superiority, they want revenge. I'm hurting, right? Validate me. And so that's the actual message behind the behavior. And some encouraging responses, we're in the last column now, column 8 of row 3. We're going to avoid retaliation and punishment altogether, right? Because that's not addressing the mistaken belief. That's that mistaken reaction. We're going to acknowledge and validate their feelings. Like, you must feel really alone, right? If you have a child who's self-harming, you must feel really alone. You must feel really sad, right? Like, how do you feel? Like, I imagine that you feel really hurt. And I'm here for you. Like, I want to support you, right? You must feel big feelings in order to do something like that to yourself, right? So we're going to acknowledge and validate their feelings. We're going to take responsibility for our own part of the conflict, right? if we tend to invalidate our kid or child's feelings, or we tend to not pay as much attention to them as we should, or we, things have happened in their life that have led them to doing that. Maybe there's been divorce or grief or death or loss or conflict or violence or abuse, right? And we would say, I acknowledge and I take full responsibility for my part in this. Like, maybe it's abuse, right? Like there's abuse in the past, and I acknowledge that I'm partially responsible for that as your parent, right? As hard and as tragic as that is, it's like I take responsibility for my own part of whatever the conflict is. I'm just giving examples. And then we make amends, right? I'm sorry. I take responsibility for whatever part I played in that, and I'm sorry. And there might not be a way to take that back, but I can apologize and I love you, and right, and we're acknowledging that. Okay, we're taking responsibility. And then we're going to find ways to build connection with that child, right? They're self-harming, they have a lot of time alone, maybe there's a new relationship and you're busy and you're out of the house. It's like, I'm going to physically find ways to build connection. I'm going to spend more time with you. On every Friday, we're going to do this. I'm going to get off my phone instead of, during dinner, and I'm going to look at you and I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to say, hey, I'm noticing that you seem a little down today. I'm here, right? You don't have to talk. Just know I'm here. I'm in the other room if you want to talk or whatever, right? You're going to actively find ways to build connection. We talked about this a lot, like mutual problem solving. Hey, how can I help you to not do this anymore? Do you want to keep doing it? Most people don't, right? Like have that conversation. Hopefully with the help of a therapist or somebody that's helping you if you've got a child who's self-harming, but like mutual problem solving about how to help them not do that anymore, right? Like what can you do instead? How can I be here for you? Can I be here for you? Give them choices and focus on solutions. So, hey, would it work if we did XYZ on Friday and Saturday? Would you rather do this or that? Would you rather me check in with you on text every day or call you? Would you rather me, right? Like this is going to look very specific, giving them choices and focusing on solutions to help them not do that thing anymore. And so on the right side that we just went through boxes 4 through 8, what that's going to look like eventually as we work, we repeat and we practice and we consistently do those things in box number 8, we're going to get to the other side in box number 1, right? They're going to eventually respect the dignity of themselves and others. They're going to show compassion and concern for others, right? That safe belief that they've now adopted is people matter. People deserve respect no matter what, right? I'm safe. I'm lovable, right? And so we kind of can get from that right side of the chart over to the left by consistently doing these things. And so I hope that helps kind of specifically. We can't go through every column or every behavior, but I gave you guys a good solid example, hopefully for at least one. And then what you're going to do is you're going to find your child's behavior in column 4, and then you're going to kind of do the exact steps that I just did. And it's kind of giving you some specific actionable things to do. And it can also help you make sense of your own feelings as a parent, right? Why do I feel so irritated by my kids? Why do I feel so threatened or challenged by them? It's going to help you, oh, like this is why, right? Like because they're doing this, and this is my like mistaken reaction to this mistaken belief. So my hope is that you can use that independently, like I said, for specific problems that you guys have, because unfortunately, I could probably do an entire parenting series just on this chart and fill up like 10 classes, but we don't have time for that. So yeah, check it out. Try to find your kids' behavior or the struggles that you're having, and then kind of directly piece that together. All right, let me go back to some other questions because we had some more. So we went over this slide with the columns. What about highly smart elementary age kids? And I don't know, that's not a, missing maybe what the question is on that one, Angie. My 6-year-old's having emotional outbursts when her sibling makes her angry. I really wouldn't call that misbehavior. How could it be addressed? So I would start like, okay, how old is the sibling? What are they doing to make her angry? Talk to that 6-year-old, help her identify why it's making her angry, right? Anger is a secondary emotion. So does she feel like she's out of control? Does she feel threatened? Does she feel unsafe? Where is that coming from, right? And then helping her identify these. I'm feeling like, help her identify those feelings. She might be like, oh, I'm feeling really unsafe because the other one's, I don't know, running around and swirling something in her face and she feels like she's going to get hit in the face, right? Like, we got to address that thing, I think, because her getting angry is a reaction to whatever that primary feeling is. And you're right, I wouldn't really call that misbehavior. I would also address the other sibling, right? Like, what's going on there? And it might be something as simple as like, hey, what have we done as parents that makes you feel it's okay to like attack your sister like that? Or like, you know, maybe it's attention. Does the other one need attention? And he's getting this from the 6-year-old. So kind of like figuring out the dynamics perhaps, and then assisting your 6-year-old and like really learning how to identify the feeling. And then how does she deal with that feeling, right? Here's how you identify it. You verbalize it. I'm getting so frustrated because you're doing this thing. I need you to stop, right? What system do you have as parents to address, right, sibling behavior? A lot of it is like helping kids learn to work it out by themselves, and teaching her skills, right? Some active ignoring, teaching her those skills of like identifying, verbalizing her emotions, teaching her how to problem solve. Okay, what could you do when sibling does this, right? What do you do when you feel unsafe? All of that should be hopefully helpful to you, JA. Oh, I struggle to have my kids take me seriously because I'm silly with them. Well, this is an iPhone question, so I don't know your name, but how often are you being silly with them versus how often are you being serious? And I imagine it's almost like a leadership thing, right? Like, do your kids do they respect you as a leader, or do they kind of see you as one of them, right? And I guess I'm just talking in terms of like parent-child dynamics, and that could even just be said, hey, I love to be silly with you guys. We're silly all the time. Like, I'm a silly mom or dad. I don't know, it just says iPhone. I'm a silly parent, right? And that's awesome. And I love being silly with you guys. And also, I need you to respect when I'm giving you this limit of XYZ, right? So you could kind of use a kind and firm, like, I'm silly. I love being silly. It's so fun. And it's awesome because we can be light and, but there's a time to be silly and there's a time to be serious. And now's the time to be serious, right? And so, like, vocalizing that and then also asking them, do I give you guys some impression that I'm only silly? Do I give you guys some impression that you don't have to listen to what I say because I'm silly with you sometimes? Like, depending on the age of your kids, you might get some really honest feedback about, oh, okay, maybe I'm silly in the wrong times or in the wrong moments, right? Um, and I would say, do you follow through? Are you consistent with your boundaries and limits, and do you follow through when they break the rules? Because that might be why they don't take you seriously as well. Only act out, but everything else is fine. If you're not doing the authoritative parenting, how do you prevent constant talking back and kids trying to negotiate and barter or anything? So one thing that I would like strategize in this type of parenting style is you can't prevent their constant talking back, right? But you can ignore it and not engage. And that's what we would encourage you to do, is kids trying to negotiate and constantly talking back. Like, that's the time when we would say, those are not safety issues. Those are not, like, actively ignore them. Right? Because we're not going to engage in a power struggle. We're not going to engage in a negotiation conversation when they know that they're non-negotiable. And then that's my other thing. Do they know what's non-negotiable? Do they know very clearly what their limits and boundaries are? And if they do, and you've done this really great collaborative like refresher of like, you know that these things are your expectations and you've helped us come up with them, and like these are the non-negotiables, and then you just don't engage, right? Because you're not going to get into it, you're going to get into a power struggle with the talking back and the negotiating, and you're consistent with that time and time and time again, and then they learn. That's the response that I get. There's not a, oh well, like if I talk back to her enough, she's gonna eventually get tired of it and change her mind and she'll give in, right? We don't give in. If it's a non-negotiable, we don't give in. And so look at some of those things in according to your situation, Sherry. I hope that helps. Um, oh, VA, okay. I'm struggling with the kind and firm. I think it might be because I came from an authoritative upbringing. I steer away from that style. I want to convey authority, but I end up being too firm or too kind. VA, thank you so much for the vulnerability. And what you're describing is incredibly common for a lot of people. I think that's one of my biggest wishes to impart on you is look at your family of origin and how you were parented, because more often than not, there's stuff there, right? I do not want you to be too kind or too permissive. I don't want you to be too firm or too authoritative, because neither of those approaches typically work great long term. And so, man, like if you're struggling, I get it. I think this is like this is common, and it's completely normal to feel like this is really hard. And I think parenting is hard in general, and you're doing the best that you can, right? Your parents did what they could with what they had, and we're doing something different. And you can kind of maybe walk yourself through, process through some of that, because I do find that a lot of parents are triggered by the behavior that was not allowed in them. Okay. So if you struggle with your kid when they really throw tantrums or when they cry, this is getting deeper into it, but I could almost bet that when you were young, you weren't allowed to cry or you weren't allowed to feel, right? Those things from childhood trigger us in our own situations, in our own parenting with our kids. And so, like you said, you were raised in a really an authoritative household or upbringing, and sometimes we overcorrect and it's like, oh, I can't do anything that my parents did. Like, yeah, we have such a sense of like revulsion to that type of parenting, right? So I do the complete opposite, and then I'm too permissive, or I'm too silly all the time, or I don't follow through, right? And we don't want either of those, but we do want you to explore these feelings of like, man, this is really hard, and yet know that you're doing the right thing and you're doing everything within your power. You're putting effort forward to be here. And so the fact that you're willing to like learn something new and open your mind and try different strategies is enough. And just keep doing that. Keep reminding yourself that this is really hard, and give yourself some grace. And there is a medium. There is a way to kind of be kind and firm, so to speak. So that's what this exercise will help you do, hopefully, VA. So thank you so much. Kid gets sad, irritable, frustrated feelings like a firecracker. Everything else, they're good. Maybe they have to learn emotional regulation. Smart, socially awkward, positive behavior somehow. Yeah. So Angie, I think I'm understanding your question a little bit, and it depends on the age of your child, but look at it. Is their emotional maturity or their emotional intelligence kind of does that correlate with their developmental age or their age? And there could be other things going on, right? But you're saying everything is good with the exception of emotion. And it might just be like they don't have those skills, right? They don't have emotional regulation skills yet. And so, like I was saying earlier, they rely on us to help them regulate their emotions. They borrow essentially our nervous system from the time they're babies. I don't know if you guys remember, maybe you do. pretty vividly. When they're really little babies, you know, as soon as they're crying and they're screaming, you pick them up and you put them on you skin to skin, and they calm, right? Their nervous system, their heartbeat regulates with yours. And so the reason why I bring that up is not because you can do that with your teenage kids, but because it is still the same desired concept. It's still what they need. They still need to borrow our nervous system, right? Until that whole brain is fully developed. And that's what we're doing by modeling our own emotional regulation. How do you deal with your emotions when you feel them? Are you feeling your feelings like a firecracker? Are you modeling emotional regulation to them? If not, that's something you guys can do together, right? Start by identifying your feelings. I always start there, teaching your kid, here's a feelings wheel. Like you could print one out really easily, find one on Google, just Google feelings wheel. What are you feeling today? What are you feeling right now, right? And get them used to like being able to identify it. And then, okay, what made me feel that way? What happened, right? And you're going to start getting them to verbalize these things. You're going to start getting them to understand this is what happens when I feel this way. I feel it in my body when I feel this way, right? And so a smart kid should really be able to thrive with that if you teach them this stuff. And it would not surprise me that a kid who might be emotionally struggling maybe doesn't do great in social situations, because emotional intelligence and awareness and regulation is very much so a part of social interaction. So yeah, start there, Angie. I hope that that's helpful. Cool. We got some great questions. And to kind of fill out the rest of our time, I'm going to go through the kind and firm formula and some examples. And if you guys want, you can ask me some specific questions for those, and then we'll look into family meetings. The family meetings handout is in the chat. If you go into that, you can download it. But we will start here with the kind and firm first. So if you're struggling with this concept, you are not alone. This is hard for a lot of people. Annie put the family meetings PDF and the PowerPoint in the chat, so you can download those if you need them. Okay. In bold, I have put the formula for kind and firm phrasing, okay? Because I think that this is pretty important when it comes to positive discipline, and it's an actionable skill that you can take home with you. This puts us in this balance of not permissive parenting, and it's not authoritative parenting. We're somewhere in the middle. The formula is the kind, the connecting, the validating statement, and that could be I love you. And we always want to use the word and. I talked a little bit about this in our last class. So if you remember, we talked a little bit about but versus and. And then you're going to put the limit, the boundary, the rule, the expectation, whatever that is. So we're sandwiching those two together. And so, like I said, my favorites are like, I love you, and my answer is no. I hear you. You really want that toy, and it's not on our list. Okay. So we're doing this kind of sandwich of compassion, connection, validation, and then here's the boundary and the limit, right? And this is the suggestion because it works long term. So, oh, somebody wants part one. So here's some examples. I know that you don't want to stop playing, right? You want to keep playing your video game, and your time is up, and it's time for dinner. So you're going to consistently and reliably follow through with whatever limit you guys have made. And hopefully you've already done that collaboratively. And you're going to make that little sandwich. You're going to validate their feelings, and you're going to set the limit or remind them of the limit. I know that you'd rather watch TV, or I know you'd rather binge Netflix than do your homework, right? You can show understanding, you can be empathetic. And we agreed that your homework has to get done before you're able to use your tablet or before you're able to veg out, or whatever that is, right? For littler kids, it could look like something, you really don't want to brush your teeth. This is a big one in my household. You really don't want to brush your teeth. I get that. And we can do it together. Do you want to race? Or we don't run in the house because we've had an issue with that. Do you want to hop or do you want to skip to the bathroom? Right? And so this is that kind of like age appropriate younger kids. You're going to give them options and you're going to redirect. So, okay, you don't want to go to bed. And do you want to read one story or two before bed? Do you want to hop or skip to the bedroom? This redirection works a lot better with younger kids, of course, and this language is not going to work if you try to use it with older kids. I can tell that you don't want to mow the lawn. And what did we agree on for our family contributions? Right? And you're just going to kind of, not in a sarcastic way, in a very genuine, kind way, you're going to wait for the answer, right? Because you guys have already agreed upon this 3 weeks ago. They agreed that they would mow the lawn once a week or once a month, whatever it looks like, right? That was your agreement. And they get certain things out of this agreement, right? Maybe they have a car and they have freedom, they have a late curfew and they get to be with friends and they get allowance or whatever. It's like, if we agree to do this as your parents, you agree to do this, right? What are our contributions? I can tell that you don't want to take out the trash. And what was our agreement? And there's no negotiating, there's no like, and it's just, you just kind of kindly and quietly wait. If you have more issues, like I said, and it's beyond this, then there's like a relationship damage issue or trust damage issue, and you have to kind of repair that first. There's going to be a lot more helpful information in the positive discipline book for teenagers. If you have a teenager that is really not doing anything that you ask, or you have no relationship really whatsoever. I already used this one, so it's like, okay, I hear you. You're super frustrated because you want that toy that your sister's playing with. And you can have a turn when she's done. Do you want to play with the mouse or the hippo? Right? Redirection, you're giving them a choice and you're setting the limit while being kind and firm. I can see that you want to keep playing your video game, or I can see that you want to stay on your computer. I can see that you want to stay on your phone, right? And it's 10 o'clock, so we turn the Wi-Fi off at 10 o'clock. You can do it by, you can turn your phone off by yourself, or I can do it for you. Or you can go turn the Wi-Fi back off, or I can turn it off. Whatever that agreement has been with you and your child. All right, so kind and firm. Hopefully you're able to use some of that, guys. You can take that formula with you and, again, try to generalize it, make it sound genuine and within your own like language and how you sound to your own kids. A lot of people, you have to kind of work with that for it to feel genuine. The family meetings handout is a 2-page document. So again, we don't have enough time to cover all of that, but you have very specific, helpful guidelines, hopefully. The gist of all of this is that family meetings are used in positive discipline in order to create connection and foster that belonging and significance in your family. So what we suggest, and this happens from the time kids are really young, I actually have them in my own home with my toddler. We use family meetings to problem solve family issues. We do it in a collaborative way. There's no punishment. It's not like, oh, hey, Carly was out past her curfew and we're going to deal with that at the family meeting, right? It's not like a way to shame the kids for doing things wrong. It's literally a way to show how to problem solve. So you might say something like, okay, we're going to bring this issue of, I'm noticing on a Tuesday, I wake up and like, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated. Like the kids are always late. Nobody's on time getting out to the car to get to school. So I'm gonna go put that on the fridge on our little note sheet of like what to discuss at our family meeting on Friday. Right. So that's kind of an example of how you would make a list of what you, or maybe one day you're sitting in the kitchen and you're cooking dinner and you realize, my teenager, it won't stop using their phone at the table or whatever it is, right? You're going to put it on the list. And then weekly, you're going to schedule family meetings in and you're going to prioritize them as if they were meetings or appointments with someone else, right? So you're not going to like skip them and cancel them. There's structure in the meetings, and if you stick to this, everybody feels supported, everybody feels like they can contribute, right? I talked a little bit about having like a talking stick or a totem. Maybe it's a paperweight or an object that you guys have in your household, or a rock or something that is like, hey, I'm talking and the rest of the family has to wait until I pass it on. We always end family meetings with fun, whether that's like a game, trivia, doing something fun, having dessert, having a dance party, like whatever it is that you guys like, you end the problem solving with something fun, right? We're associating this positively in the brain and behaviorally. I also often say that it's not just issues that you can bring into family meetings. If you guys want to go on vacation over the summer and it's, February or March and you want to see where everybody wants to go, put that on your list of things to problem solve, right? You can get, again, very specific tips for family meetings and like what they should look like from this PDF. So you post an agenda where all the family members can write their concerns or problems. This could be the 16-year-old child adding theirs. This could be the 12-year-old. This could be mom. This could be dad. It could be grandpa. It could be the co-parent. It could be whoever. You post it or put it in your phone as a shared note, right? That everybody can put concerns or problems in there. You typically start family meetings with compliments, right? Because you're setting the tone to verbalize positive things about each other instead of going into this really negative space. You're going to always focus on solutions. This is to teach life skills to our kids. So we're not going to blame kids. We're not using this as a negative thing. This is an actionable way to teach kids about brainstorming and problem solving, all of that stuff. So keep them short. It depends on the age of your kids. It gives you a lot more tips. I'm going to go ahead and check out the chat and see. Cool. Okay. Yeah, so this is going to give you like really some tidbits to take home and use for family meetings. Avoid skipping them, make them an important date on your calendar, end with dessert or something fun. Don't expect it to be perfect. And it shows you exactly how to structure each meeting, and you use the 3 R's and an H to make sure that the solutions that are proposed, because all proposed solutions get written down, you make sure that they're related, you make sure that they're reasonable, respectful, and helpful, the solutions are, and then you eliminate ones that are not. You have a scribe who's like crossing off things that aren't going to work in terms of problem solving, and then you finally come up with a solution and then you practice it. And so this is a very good way to teach, like I said, teach these life skills to kids, and you're modeling all that stuff while you do it. I hope that you guys feel like you can genuinely take that and make it a part of your family. And if not, I mean, family meetings are huge in positive discipline, but if not, you might just not use it. Maybe you have to try another method. But I am finished with material, and we got a ton of good questions. We're about at our end. Annie shared a survey. If you guys have a couple moments to answer our survey, there's a link in the chat. And our next session is going to be on divorce and co-parenting. That's next month on March 6th. It's a very popular one. I try to give as much information as I can in, the 2-hour period. And so if you're interested in anything relating to divorce and co-parenting, we'll talk about some strategies and just some information to educate you guys. And if you have co-parents, send it to them. I have some helpful links and stuff in there for co-parents. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good one.